Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're taking a deep dive into something that literally affects thousands of families across the state, and that is Alabama's public school residency rules. We're looking at the completely updated landscape as of June 2026. Now, if you're a parent or guardian gearing up for the new school year, you already know the dreaded back-to-school paperwork pile can feel like an absolute maze, but hey, don't worry, because we're going to break it all down step by step. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what to expect, what documents to hunt down, and how to make sure your student is completely ready to go on day one.
So, first things first, let's tackle the really big question. Can you just choose any public school you want in Alabama? Honestly, it's a super common misconception that public school enrollment is just based on your personal preference. But generally speaking, the answer is no. In Alabama, public school enrollment is anchored directly to where your child actually lives. It's not about where you work or where a grandparent lives or, which high school happens to have the best football team. Unless you have an approved transfer, a magnet option, or a charter exception, your child's assigned school is fundamentally tied to their home address.
To really get why this is, we got to talk about the attendance zone. Think of an attendance zone as a specific geographic boundary that's drawn and managed by your local Board of Education. If you were to map out your local school district, your family's physical street address acts as the X marks the spot. That exact location dictates which specific zone you fall into, and because of that, exactly where your student is assigned to enroll. Alabama's state attendance laws are essentially built entirely around these local districts and their strict geographic boundaries.
So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the residency rule explained. Second, gathering your required proof. Third, handling special family situations. Fourth, navigating residency disputes. And finally, number 5, your enrollment action plan.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the Residency Rule Explained, and exactly why your address dictates your school. It's actually kind of fascinating to see the massive domino effect of just a single home address. Your address doesn't just decide what classroom your child sits in, it literally impacts the entire district's operational logistics. Public schools use these residency rules to accurately plan their staffing needs. I mean, they have to know exactly how many teachers to hire for kindergarten versus 5th grade, right? It organizes all the transportation routes, making sure buses are dispatched efficiently based on where eligible students actually live. And absolutely crucial here, it determines how district funding is allocated. It's this huge interconnected system that relies entirely on accurate residency data. Now, while your residency is a massive piece of the puzzle, it's not the whole shebang. Alabama also enforces strict age and compulsory attendance laws. For example, to even enter kindergarten, state law mandates that a child has to be 5 years old by September 1st or by the exact date the school begins in that specific district. There are also first-grade eligibility rules and basic compulsory attendance requirements to think about. Basically, proving your address gets you to the right building, but meeting these age and school readiness rules, that's what actually gets you into the classroom.
Moving right along to Section 2, gathering your required proof. Let's talk about what documents you actually need to find. For a lot of families, this all boils down to what we can call the 2 proofs rule. While exact procedures do vary depending on your local district, school systems frequently demand multiple forms of verification. They want to be absolutely sure your residence firmly matches their attendance zone. And spoiler alert here, a single piece of junk mail with your name on it is definitely not going to cut it. Districts want robust, official confirmation that the student physically lives right within their boundaries.
So, what actually counts as proof? Well, you'll need the heavy hitters. You should start gathering official documents showing the parent or guardian's physical address. We're talking about things like a current lease agreement, a property deed, a mortgage statement, or a recent utility bill. And keep in mind, some districts are incredibly strict about this exact list. It is worth noting that alternative proofs, like a sworn written affidavit, are really only accepted by certain districts in very limited, super specific situations.
But wait, it doesn't always stop at a lease. Local districts absolutely have the authority to ask for extra documents that prove both identity and health status right on top of those standard residency proofs. It's super common for them to ask for a birth certificate to prove the child's identity, a parent or guardian photo ID, immunization records, custody documents if that applies to your family, and previous school records if you're transferring. Honestly, having all of this neatly organized in one folder ahead of time is going to save you a massive headache on registration day. Okay, Section 3, handling special family situations. What happens when the standard rules just don't fit?
The state definitely recognizes that life happens, and they have crucial protections for those edge cases where standard paperwork doesn't quite match reality. For instance, for families experiencing homelessness, the state strictly mandates that kids should not face any enrollment delays whatsoever while housing questions are being figured out. For military families facing relocation, some Alabama districts have special provisions that actually let you register remotely before you even physically arrive in the state, though you will still need to show proof of residency before attendance actually begins. And for families navigating shared custody, well, that is heavily dependent on local board policy, so you'll really need to check your specific district's guidelines for that one.
Now, there's one more major exception you really need to be aware of, and that's charter schools. Unlike traditional neighborhood schools, which are strictly geographically constrained by your home address, charter schools are treated entirely differently under Alabama law. They operate completely outside those standard attendance zone maps and have their very own distinct preference and capacity rules. So while your address might still play a part in a charter school's enrollment preferences, it doesn't work at all the same way it does for a neighborhood school. If you're eyeing a charter, you need to read their specific enrollment policy incredibly carefully.
All right, Section 4, Navigating Residency Disputes. Let's look at what happens when things go wrong. No, I really need to stress this point. Families must be incredibly careful never to use an address that isn't the child's actual physical residence. Alabama attendance laws and local district policies are specifically built to root out and prevent fraudulent enrollment. Districts are actively monitoring for this. Plus, if you end up moving in the middle of the school year, schools can and will require updated proof of residence to ensure you actually still belong in that zone.
So what happens if a district suspects an issue? Well, they trigger a formal dispute process. Step 1, they'll simply ask you for more documentation. Step 2, they might actively investigate the address claim just to verify who actually lives there. And Step 3, if your residency cannot be verified under their rules, the district has the absolute legal right to deny enrollment or completely remove the student from that school assignment. Now, while some districts might allow temporary enrollment during an investigation, please understand that is purely a local policy choice. It is definitely not a statewide guarantee. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, Your Enrollment Action Plan. These are your next steps for a smooth first day.
All right, let's turn all this into a concrete to-do list. Number 1, confirm your specific school zone for your exact home address before you do anything else. Number 2, gather at least 2 solid forms of proof of residence, like a current lease and a utility bill. Number 3, get all your necessary identity, health, and custody documents together in one spot. And number 4, which honestly is probably the absolute most important step you can take here, contact your local school board directly. Policies can and do differ from one district to another, and they can even update mid-year. So calling them beforehand to get their exact, current checklist is the safest bet for a smooth process.
Which leaves us with one final, critical question. Is your family's paperwork actually ready for the first day of school? The core residency rule is strictly enforced across Alabama, but as we've seen, the actual nuances are surprisingly local. Don't wait until the middle of August to realize you're missing a notarized document or an updated power bill. Find out exactly what your district requires today, get your paperwork locked in early, and set your student up for a fantastic year. Thanks so much for joining this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.